ragamuffin keep on rising. To the top, ragamuffin keep striving in every way. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm with the rhythm, over the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place, I with the one Jamal ski. We are the general. We sit up on the rhythm and over the mic incredible. I'm me right palm with the rhythm, move with the rhythm, I sit down steady. Every ragamuffin you do, I feel rock and follow me. You know you love her for your life. Make we jump up on the rhythm, make we ride it. We chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we jump on mic, they call we give it a general.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Joshua Casper back at you with another developer live stream, and I'm very excited for this one because today we're joined by Josh Story from Output, one of my favorite manufacturers. Josh, how are you today?
Hey, doing well. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Josh, why don't you, before we jump into the nuts and bolts of the stream here, why don't you just give us a quick intro to who you are, maybe a bit about your background and what your role is over there at Output?
Sure. So I've been at Output for about 6 years now. I started in 2015. doing some audio editing at first. Worked in the sound design department, doing editing loops for Rev, the original Rev, and then got into making some presets for Signal. From there, when I came on full time, my first project was the slices section of Exhale. So I spent a good chunk of time in a small room just chopping vocals before that came out. That was really fun. And from there, worked on Substance and kind of oversaw the presets for that. I did a lot of sampling for Substance, oversaw the presets, and then worked on Movement, presets for Movement, and then Arcade, and eventually Portal as the product manager for Portal and Thermal. And now I work on the play engines of Arcade. So anything to do with kind of the instrument side of Arcade is what I work on now.
That's crazy. So you started off essentially making presets, and now you're the project managing some really incredible plugins from a really respectable and world-renowned manufacturer, man. That's pretty crazy. In 6 years, no less.
Yeah, it is crazy. I definitely never, I went to school in Boston and Berklee College of Music, and my background is in music production and mixing and synthesis, and I never really thought I would get into working in plugins, but it's been really awesome. I've learned so much about building products and about sound design and marketing. I've learned just a ton. Working at Output has been really great. And yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Are you located near the Output offices? Or are you strictly remote, just remote because 2020, or what's going on with that?
Right. So I lived in Los Angeles for the past 8 years, and so Output is headquartered in Los Angeles. After going remote for a year, I was fortunate enough to be able to, move closer to home, to my family and friends. So I'm back in North Carolina now, and still, working remote. But yeah, I was close for the first portion there.
Nice. Well, hopefully, I mean, it's nice to be around friends and family, but it's also LA. You might bump into Tom Cruise or something out there. I don't know how it works.
Right. That's pretty much how it works. Yeah.
So today we're going to be focusing on the effects bundle because, as I said in the beginning of the video, you're the manufacturer of focus on Plugin Boutique this month. No better manufacturer to have in focus, and we've got a really good deal on the effects bundle, which includes Thermal, Portal, and Movement. But before we jump into that, I just want to touch base on some of the other Output catalog, if you will. And before we even jump into that, I just want to ask you, because Exhale, you said you were working on the is it called the sequencers?
Yeah, the chops or the slices. I can't remember
slices. That was it.
Yeah.
Exhale is one of my favorite tools. What we need, Josh, and I'm just going to put this out here. It's of course live on stream, so we need an Exhale 2. Okay.
Of course,
we need an Exhale 2. I hope it's in the pipeline. If you want to tell us it's coming and give us the exclusive right now, that's perfectly fine with me. But it needs to happen because, I mean, there are a lot of sounds that came in Exhale. And for people who don't know, Exhale is like a vocal instrument, right? Maybe actually, I'll let you go ahead and just touch on give people a brief explanation of what Exhale is before I talk about it a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. So I can't say that we're putting out Exhale 2 yet, but we do have Hooked in Arcade. If you're familiar with Arcade, we have Hooked, which is a lot of vocals also, but definitely we all want to do more vocals. It's great. I use Exhale all the time. But yeah, the core idea behind Exhale was basically what you said. It's a vocal instrument. To my knowledge, there wasn't really anything else like it on the market at the time. It's kind of like three different engines within Exhale. The first one being like the chromatic mode, so you can play pads, chords, one shots, sort of like plucky sounds, but all based around vocals. Then there were loops, which were groups of loops. I think it was an octave that all kind of worked together and sounded good together. And then the last part was the slices, which I worked on, and it was more meant for like playing like you would typically chop like a sample on a MPC or something like that.
Yeah, so it's a contact instrument. It's got all of those vocals, a pretty massive library, and those slices were my favorite engine. As you said, there are 3 engines. Those are my favorite. Those are my go-to. And one of the key features that I liked about it so much was the tuning. I could tell it what scale I wanted to be in instead of me having to go in and repitch things. I could just say, no, I'm in D minor today. And then once you put it in D minor, you could just keep flipping through all of the different slice banks, and they would all just be right there. And it's just, whether or not you're looking for a feature vocal, like some sort of chop or something, or just kind of like little sprinkles of goodness in the background, I mean, Exhale is where it's at. And yeah, I don't think I've seen anything else like it before or since. So Exhale too. Get it done. I mean, we're friends now, so I can ask things of you, I believe. Some other things. I've been a big Output fanboy for a long time. I made the intro video here, which was all just inspired by the massive contact libraries that you've put out. I mean, some of my favorites would be the analog series, which would be strings, and then brass and winds?
Brass and winds, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just phenomenal libraries. I really like your approach to kind of like the futuristic approach. Rather than just a straight brass sound, you're going to get some really dirty processing going on and give it a really unique touch and feel. And that was just phenomenal. And as I said before we jumped on stream, I really wanted to just let people know that they need to check out all of what Output has to offer, not just the effects we're going to talk about today. But as you said in the beginning of the stream, you were the project manager on both Portal and Thermal. What does that mean? Yes. What is your role as the project manager on a project like Thermal or Portal?
Sure. So I can start with Portal because that was the first one. My role was to help basically facilitate the whole project from start to finish, but working with developers and designers. A lot of what I did in the beginning was market research and finding other granular plugins and modular granular stuff, and just doing a lot of research and seeing what was possible and kind of deciding on what sort of features should go into it. And then it was a lot of back and forth with the developers, just like checking the work as it was built and working with the designers on wireframes and making sure that all of the knobs are in places that make sense and they're all grouped together, and making sure that the ranges of the knobs are good. And really a lot of what the focus was trying to make sure that there's never going to be settings that will sound bad. So it was a lot of like just making sure that, the ranges don't go too far, and just really trying to focus on making sure that it sounds good and musical, which was something that I found previously in a lot of granular effects and synthesis plugins, that you can do really cool stuff with granular synthesis, but it doesn't always necessarily sound like the most musical. So that was like a big focus of Portal. I also oversaw the presets for that, and kind of came up with the categories with the help of our content team for each of the preset categories, and and even coming up with the ideas for some of the marketing videos and the walkthroughs. So it's kind of just like the overall process of building the plugin. And I would say it was essentially the same thing for Thermal. Thermal was actually a little easier because we already had the framework built that we built Portal on, and we're able to, I'm sure you can see the similarities in the UI. So it was a lot of, figuring out how we could reuse code that we had, but build something new and, develop something that would sound, still sound good, but different.
Well, I mean, you did a great job, Josh, because both of those plugins, not only did they sound absolutely fantastic. I mean, Thermal is my go-to. It's on on one of my inserts by default. But I mean, yeah. I mean, come on. It's a massive plugin. But they both look so good too. They just look so good.
They do.
I mean,
yeah. We've got
I
some
love
good
that
design.
when I open it, it doesn't feel like you skipped that step. With some plugins, it's like it's okay. I mean, it sounds great, but I want it's not visually interesting. But but Portal and
Yeah.
Thermal, especially on like I'd say the performance page. I don't know if that's what you call it, but I mean that big XY pad with the graphics and everything. I mean, come on, it's just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's
plugins.
always kind of been the ethos at Output is to make things, we want them to look good, and we find that a lot of music tech, a lot of it is outdated. It's based on like vintage gear and trying to emulate things from the past, and we always wanted to look forward and make our plugins like very visually appealing as well as sound good, so that you really know that not that it's going to sound better because it looks better, but it's more fun to use, and it makes you want to use it if it looks good and it feels good to use. So
well, that's 100% what I was saying. I mean, it's not what it sounds like is what's really important at the end of the day. But when I open up Thermal, I feel like I want to stay inside and play around as much as I can. I mean, as you start, I mean, we'll talk about Thermal more when we watch the video on it, but like as you start adding more stages, the graphics change. It's like, well, like it's just it's so good. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's let the people see Portal in action, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it in a more granular fashion, if you will. That was a pun. Yes, it was intended. But before we do that, Josh, I have been authorized to give a copy of all of the plugins we talk about away today. Actually, 2 copies. So people who are here and active in the chat and who have obviously hit the like button, that should be just a given at this point in 2021. 2 copies of Portal, 2 copies of Thermal, 2 copies of Movement, and then at the very end, we're going to give away 1 effects bundle. So one person's going to get all 3 of the effects we talk about today. So I'm going to do the first giveaway right now before we jump into the Portal video. And all you need to do is let us know where you're watching from. So put that in the chat, and we're going to pick 1 lucky winner. And at the very end of the stream, I'm just going to list who's won, and you're going to be able to grab these incredible plugins. So let us know where you're watching from. And Joel, if you want to go ahead and run the Portal video for us, and then Josh and I will come back and talk about it. Also, before Joel does that, sorry, Joel, that's my mistake if you already ran it. If you have any questions about any of these plugins or any Output plugins in general, whether that be a library or effect, or just questions for Josh in general, go ahead and leave them in the chat. And we're gonna see those and ask Josh to fill us in on the goodness if he has the information. I'm sure he's got the information. He's got it. Yeah. So if you got any questions at all, go ahead and put it in the chat. And Joel, go ahead and run that Portal video for us, and we'll see you in a minute.
Welcome to Portal. Output's granular effects plugin. Example 1. Drums. Now, send it through Portal. Redirection to vocals. For the experienced, advanced mode is here. And now, keys. Portal briefing complete. Goodbye.
All right, so there we go. That's a quick overview look at Portal, which is a granular synthesis plugin. Joel, if you could mute yourself, please. Really, really fantastic plugin. You get some really, really unique results with. And Josh, if you just kind of want to give us a brief intro to Portal, kind of what you were aiming for with it, and then of course we're all going to want to know what exactly is granular synthesis, because it's kind of like a dark art. So if you could just kind of give us an intro to Portal and granular synthesis in general, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'll start with granular synthesis as just a very basic explanation. I like to think of it as, so there's an analogy I heard. If you think of like a nut, it has a shell, and then it has the flesh inside of the shell. So that would be the same as what a grain is in granular synthesis. So granular synthesis is made up of grains. The shell would be an envelope on a piece of audio, and the audio would be the inside of the nut. So it's basically taking a piece of audio buffer and breaking it down into a bunch of little small pieces called grains, and then stitching them back together in interesting ways. So there you can control like different things about each grain. And so that's what Portal is based on. Portal, I sort of mentioned this earlier, but one of the things we wanted to do was make sure that it would be musical sounding and useful in as many musical contexts as possible. So a few of the features that we focused on to do that were, if you go into past the XY, the main page, into the advanced page, there's features where basically you can tempo sync everything. So a lot of granular synthesis in the past, or granular processors, weren't necessarily synced to a tempo. So it's all kind of free floating and ambient, which you can also achieve with Portal. But we made sure that you could sync when grains start, when they end. There's also an algorithm in there to slow the time down, and that's all based on musical values. We also have pitch shifting, which is can be tuned or quantized to musical scales or octaves or fifths, so that you can break a signal down into a bunch of small pieces and then have it arpeggiate sort of the grains, and then you can quantize each one of those to a pitch. There's also, after the granular processor, there's effects. So there's like reverb and delay and distortion, which kind of help glue the sound together. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an effect, not a synth. So
Yes.
granular synthesis might be a little misleading, but
it's more of processing. It's granular
yeah.
processing. Yeah, definitely not. You don't take a sample and then map it to a keyboard. There's no like keyboard interaction or playability. It's definitely an audio effect.
And not only do you get that main sort of granular processing, and that's a very at the top of the advanced, it's a very prominent feature, but you also essentially get an effects suite as well. And I've mentioned this when I've done overview videos of both Portal and Thermal. I mean, you can use it just for a reverb if you really wanted to. So like, what are I know there's quite a few effects. Do you know offhand what effects are inside of Portal?
Yeah, so I think there's 7 of them. There's a reverb, there's a distortion, a lo-fi effect, a stereo delay, filter. There's a compressor at the end of the chain, and more filters. And for every preset that you make, there's 2 slots, so you can have like a chain of 2 effects going one after another. I might have missed some, but I think
there's quite a few in there. I know there's more in Thermal. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what I like to encourage people is like, grab it Portal for the granular processing. But I mean, it's also got phenomenal output level reverb delay processing inside of it as well. So you're getting those algorithms on top of it. So not only are you getting that one main effect, but you're getting all those other ones as well. So it is a multi-effect in a sense, in that regard.
Absolutely, yeah.
And another note I have here for the live stream is the presets are insane. Who's making? So some of them are. Obviously, there's some that are not, but like some of them are just like mind bending. And I was like, who's making them? And you said you actually made quite a few of them, yeah?
I did make a fair number of these presets. Definitely can't take credit for all of them. We have a phenomenal content team that makes presets for all of our instruments. But yeah, it's just we have people in house. We have a lot of contractors out of house, so we kind of like we get the presets in, and they go through a number of different sets of hands and ears before they end up in a product. So there's definitely like a polishing process. A lot of emphasis placed on, like I said, making sure they're musical. And also one thing that a lot of people might not pay attention to, but is very important, is like the level difference between presets. Like cycling through presets, you want them all to be about the same level, and we test them on everything, pianos, drums, synths. Like we just want them to work on as many things as possible, because with an audio effect, you have no idea what sounds people are going to put through them. So yeah,
that's good. That's for absolutely certain. You don't want a big jump in gain below anyone's speakers or eardrums. It's a good attention to detail there. It's the output way, man. You guys just everything. You're just hitting everything out of the park, Josh. Well done. So yeah, there are 550 presets. So I would imagine you didn't do them all, but that's
absolutely not.
But even the preset menu looks phenomenal, functions phenomenally. It's easy to make a favorite. Like there's just so much to gush about with these plugins. So before we jump and move on to Thermal, which, like I said, is my favorite kind of go-to for saturation and distortion, let's give another copy away to everyone in the chat. And this time, all you need to do to enter to win this is just type in Portal. Type in Portal, and you might win a copy of Portal. But while people are doing that, Josh, is there a tip or technique that you would suggest people who are getting into Portal to try out? Is it like a vocal? I would probably say throw it on some vocals. But is there something that, like a tip, trick, or technique you can share with us to try out?
Sure. Yeah. I love Portal on vocals and guitar and keys. One thing that I like, it blew my own mind when we figured out this part of it. But one cool thing you can do is put like it's easiest to hear on like a pure sine tone, or like something that's gonna sustain one pitch. You could do it like pluck one note of a guitar and have it just sustain, or play a pad, but you can quantize the scale and then have it, you can either modulate the pitch or do the random, there's a random diamond beneath the pitch, but basically you can create like arpeggios out of any tone that you're putting in, which is something that I really liked. Another thing would be using the grain delay to create the sort of like the shimmer effect. If you use pitch and the grain delay in together and have it, basically the pitches start to stack up and it goes up and up and up and up, and it creates this like really cool lush delay sound that I just can't get enough of. It's also really good on drums and slowing things down. Like the stretch control is really fun to play with. And I'm not sure if it's always immediately clear what re-trigger and speed do together, but I would recommend playing with those. And if you're new to granular synthesis, just like move one knob at a time and see what happens is what I would say. Like start from a blank preset if you want to learn what's going on. And just moving one knob and trying to, kind of like hear what's happening would be my advice.
Would you say that Portal lends itself more towards melodic content, or is it equally powerful on percussive elements as well?
I guess it depends. If it can be really good for percussive stuff, in that you can create new rhythms. I do think it really shines on melodic stuff, especially with like the way you can pitch and octaves and kind of like get trailing melodies of your melody going on. One other thing I like to do is I will like have Portal going on a track and have something going through it, whether it's vocals or a melody and a synth melody or something, and just like record that output and go through a bunch of different presets, and then I'll go back through and like chop little pieces and have them just be like little ear candy, like at transitions in the song, and even switching between presets. Sometimes you get like things that aren't necessarily like intended. It's like when the delay resets or something.
Yeah, like an artifact. Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
That's a really good tip in and of itself. And one last question: would you recommend to have Portal on a Ascend, or direct on the channel, or in a group? Yeah.
I always put it on a channel or a group, but I have seen a lot of people, for instance, so we did a video with Hudson Mohawk, and the way he was using it was really cool. He had this piece where he had like, I can't remember, I think it was a string, just like a string kind of like ostinato part going on, and he had, I think, 6 instances of Portal on sends, and he was just automating the send levels between them, and they're all on different presets. So it was like you can really use it however you want, but I typically use it on the channel itself, and I'll play with the dry wet and automate the dry wet to have it come in and out.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. That's where I find myself using it. It's generally, you're not going to really have Portal on too many things, I would say, inside of a track. So it makes sense just to have it on whatever you're going to be affecting.
Right.
But yeah, so that's Portal. We're already a half hour deep into the stream, so I want to keep it going here. Let's check out Thermal. And for this time, we're gonna go ahead and give a copy away before we run this video demo. And for this one, just type in Thermal in the chat for you to be entered to win. My friend Nick is marking down winners as we run these, and at the end of the stream, as I said, we're gonna read off who's won what. But in the meantime, my friend Joel is gonna go ahead and play the video about Thermal from Output for you. See you in a minute. All right, so there we go. A quick look at thermal from output. I've said it already 3 times, but it is an incredible saturation and distortion plugin. Slash effects suite. This actually has more effects built into it than Portal. And you can also put the effects, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but each stage can have one effect, and then you still have the 2 effects inserts towards the end of the stage or the chain. That's right, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So again, Josh, before we jump into talking about thermal, I got some good questions here from the community watching if you want to field these as best you can.
Sure.
And one is, I mean, it's just a natural for people to ask what's coming up next. And you can never tell us, but people like to try anyway, just in case you slip up. Do you want to just go ahead on to the next one, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of. We're always working on new stuff. I would say just keep an eye out. Look at our socials. We've got updates coming out soon.
That's just output everywhere, right? Instagram. You guys got in early and got
Instagram,
the output / output, just output.
I think so. Yeah.
You must have had to pay somebody for that. That's.
I did not, but someone did.
Do you remember the .com days where people just bought up all the URLs? You know, I'm sure Instagram and Twitter, whenever these get big, people just go in and buy up all the keywords and try to sell them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Next one is a really good question here, and I'm not sure who it's from, but it says, would you ever consider making a light version of, say, Thermal and Portal? And obviously, I wonder about that as well, because you kind of have with your basic page, the performance page. I don't know what it's called, but the big XY. Yeah. it kind of lends itself to a light version where you have all the presets, you just don't have access to that advanced panel. Is that something you've talked about internally or have plans for or anything like that?
Yeah. So funny thing, originally with thermal, we had an idea to make it collapsible, so it would just be the two macros on the side. You would just have like a little thing. Yeah, we've definitely talked about it. The thing is, the advanced pages, it's kind of always been the thing at Output is that like you have a very simple interface on the front, but we also want to allow anyone who really wants to dig in to be able to dig in. So it's kind of like it's nice to be able to dig deep if you know how to or even want to learn. But I will say that we're definitely interested in doing more effects and effects that aren't necessarily like multi effects, like just putting out good sounding effects is, I would say, something we're interested in.
Absolutely. Another question I had, let me see if, yeah. By the way, before we jump into my questions, someone asked if Arcade will ever be available as a VST, and you said it actually already is available as a VST, correct?
It is, yeah, absolutely. AU, VST, VST3, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So hopefully that answers your question. Go check out Arcade over on output.com. Output.com, right? Yeah.
Correct.
So you've got 15, I believe, distortion types in thermal, which is a lot of distortion types. But there are many more distortion types. My question is, how do you pick what's going to be involved? Like, do you just say, 15 is enough algorithms, or it's too many if we have 20, or, why this one and not that one? Like, obviously, because distortion is the focus of thermal, how much thought what was the process of whittling down all of the options into just the 15 that are there inside of the plugin?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we had a lot more to begin with, and so we did do some whittling down. A lot of it came down to, and this kind of applies to the number of presets we put in the plugin, or when we know that we have enough effects or anything. It's kind of just like we have Output is made up of a lot of musicians and people making music, and so it's a lot of it's like just using it ourselves and going through and finding what sounds good. And if there's a distortion type that just like I can't get to sound good on anything, we might cut it out. And same thing with presets. Like if we have a preset and we're like, this like just isn't cutting it, it doesn't make the cut. But we did want to have enough so that we could make a variety of presets at the same time, and also leave room, like if we want to add more distortion types in the future. It's just kind of a matter of finding a balance of what sounds good, how we can get the most out of each one, and be able to pump out a lot of unique sounding presets.
Yeah, again, 550 presets in thermal, so plenty to get you started. And I think when I did like a 25-minute video on thermal when it first came out, and I think in that video I took a few minutes just flipping through presets, because you said you guys put a lot of time and effort into them, and it really shows when you literally just flip through presets, and it's always making either a really interesting sound or everything sound better. Absolutely phenomenal. Something I wanted to touch on here is, you've got 3 stages inside of thermal, and you've got not a multi-band selector, because it's not multi-band. And my first question is, what's the difference between multi-band and stages? Because
sure,
the controls are kind of similar. It's kind of intuitive once you have your head wrapped around it. But what's the thought process there with having 3 stages as opposed to a multi-band of just one stage maybe, and being able to attack different frequencies? You can set it up so it is essentially a 3-band multi-band if you just make the first stage on the low end, and then, but I don't believe that's kind of the intended purpose, although you can do that if you wanted to. Can you just walk us through the staging system and how it's different
Sure.
and why it really excels with saturation and distortion?
Sure. Yeah, so the difference between thermal and a typical like multi-band compressor or distortion would be a multi-band would have typically 3 bands. You can obviously have more or less, but with those, you're processing all of the different frequency ranges selected with the bands at the same time. So it's like you put the sound through, you can process the low end, you can process the mids, you can process the highs. With thermal, it's multi-stages. So each stage, you can select the entire frequency range, or you can select a very small portion of it. And the idea there was wanting to be able to enhance certain parts of the sounds and leave the rest of it alone, and then add another stage where you can affect that same part or just a portion of it. So like with the multiband, unless you put multiple of the same plugin, you're not going to be able to process the same portion of the frequency range multiple times. So that was kind of the idea here, is like, even if you put a sine wave in, like you can put in a clean tone on the first stage, you can like distort the mids, and then on the next one you can, and since distorting the mids will add higher harmonics, you can then distort the highs even more, and you can just like create new sounds out of things that aren't necessarily there to begin with. And yeah, so one really cool thing about that though is the refilter option. On each stage, when you do process a specific part of the range, typically it's going to add harmonics outside of that selected area. But with the refilter, you can actually cut out all of the sound that's not a part of that band. So it's
you can
a way
really
to, like,
focus in
clean
on it.
up.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I mean that's kind of the idea of adding saturation, is you're going to get those upper harmonic frequencies, but being able to focus on just the range that you've selected in any one of those stages is really cool.
Yeah.
That's
And adding modulation to it, you can get a lot of really interesting effects by modulating the frequency cutoff of the band splitting, so that over time you can have distortion on different parts of the frequency range.
And that's something we didn't really touch on about Portal, is the modulation section, which I believe is identical, right, between the two.
Yeah.
And almost, I think everything is modulatable. Every parameter pretty much inside of there is modulatable. A really intuitive, easy to use modulation system. I also absolutely love, and this is just another thing I love about Output, is the humanize. When you increase the humanization, it shows you the range at which it will fluctuate. And then every cycle through, it will give you the actual path that it's going to take. I love it. I don't need it. Yeah. But I love that it's there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm adding randomization, but just being able to see, okay, that's the range for that particular point, how far up or down it will go, and then it'll actually show you, this time I'm taking this route. I think it's just phenomenal. I love it. I love it. Another thing I want to gush about thermal is, again, the big kind of performance XY pad. When I was flipping through presets, I would notice that sometimes it would be just a line, or sometimes it'd be slightly opaque, and sometimes it was just completely full on colorful. And I was like, what is this? What is it? But after spending a little bit of time, you notice that it's how many stages are engaged in thermal. So even if you're looking at the performance page, right? And I think this is incredibly clever because of this. Like, if I'm flipping through presets on the performance page and I come to one that I like, and it's only got kind of the line, I know that I have more stages to work with outside. It's not a full-on everything's being used right now. And I think that's just ingenious, that having that visual cue to know that I have wiggle room with other stages, or I know exactly how many other stages I have available without even having to look at the actual stages inside of the advanced sphere. I just, it looks phenomenal, and it's actually serving a purpose. I think is just so great. It's just so great.
Yeah, that well, thank you. That definitely, goes into sort of what I was talking about earlier with the design sort of ethos and output of, we want to show people as much as possible what's going on. It's like it's not going to teach you anything, or it's harder to understand if you move a knob and something changes but you don't see anything, if you don't get the visual feedback. So visual feedback is a big part of it. And there's the same thing with Portal. All of the things you see on the front page of Portal are, being controlled by controls on the advanced page. It's not necessarily as clear as with Thermal. Thermal with the stages is a lot, that one's a little easier to pick up on, but yeah.
Yeah. I guess we should also just talk about the macro controls. So is there a limit on how many things I can send to a macro?
No. So each knob can have 4 macros or modulation assignments. And then each of those assignments can have 1 macro or modulation assignment. So you could macro and modulate every knob in the app if you were,
so inclined.
So inclined. Yeah. I don't know how good it would sound, but you can
and also, I just want to ask the same sort of question I asked about Portal. Where do you think, or what types of audio do you think Thermal excels at? And I mean, I'll just throw out my opinion. I think it excels on everything, because saturation is what makes music sound good. I mean, people sleep on saturation. I say it all the time. Don't sleep on saturation. And having such a powerful... sounds weird. It sounds icky. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
I like
go ahead.
to. So I think Thermal excels at a lot of things. I personally like to just put a blank instance of Thermal on my drum bus. The blank instance has like a little 5 dB drive boost, and it just adds a little something special. I think it's great on drums. I use it a lot on vocals too, kind of the same way that I was talking about with Portal, where I'll like record things and then chop it up to take the parts that I like, instead of having it just like be a static preset across my whole sound or track. It's great on bass. If you're into like respace, this is great for that. Yeah, it depends on the preset too, but if you know what you're doing, you can really bring out any part of a sound you want and sort of like emphasize things. I love it on vocals for bringing out high end and like sort of airy textures. Yeah, it's good on a lot of sounds.
Yeah, and another thing that's important here too is it is a distortion plugin, but I mean, most times that I'm using it, it's not distortion that I'm looking for. It's just coloring the upper frequency content of sounds to make it fuller up there in the high end. It's very open up there in the high end, and just to have a nice warm sound. It's just, I mean, that's why I say it's in my default template, and that's what it's doing. 9 times out of 10, I would say, it's just using those sweet goody algorithms very, very minimally, just to add that extra bit. And then every now and then you need to go full on, obviously, and just destroy.
Yeah, it can get very aggressive. If you,
and like I said, just flip through some of those presets, especially like experimental. The experimental folder is just going to blow your mind. Let's go ahead and give away a second copy of Thermal. And for this one, chat, what I want you to do is type in Josh or Joshua. I want to see how I should be, if I should cut off the UA or not. I'm a fan of the UA, especially here in Brazil, because they hate it here. And can I just say Josh? And I say, no. I have to say your name, and your names are very difficult for me, so you have to say Joshua to me. But that is just me being vindictive. And the next plugin we're going to check out, the final one, is going to be Movement. You actually were you even part of the team when this is pretty old, the Movement plugin?
Yeah, it was. Movement came, I can't remember if it came before or after Substance, but it was the first plugin that we built outside of Contact. So it was a very special project for us. And at that point, like, yeah, I wasn't like a product manager on it or anything. At that point, Output was, I think, 13 or 14 people. And so it was more of like a, you know, it was very collaborative, more of like a band vibe than like structured corporate, you know, company building it. But I was heavily involved with the presets and the building of the plugin itself. Yeah.
Very cool. So we're just going to go ahead and keep giving away stuff here, Josh. Go ahead and type Movement into the chat for your chance to win a copy of Movement, Output's first plugin effect. And Joel, if you want to go ahead and play the video for them so they can have a listen and check out what's inside, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to Movement, an effects engine that adds rhythm to anything you plug in. An instrument, a whole mix, a synth, vocals, even a DJ set, anything. It can be used in the studio for those writing and producing, or is equally powerful in a live setting too. The rhythms can vary from crazy and intense to simple and subtle, but the cool thing is that each and every one is musical and can lock to tempo. Advancements in sidechain modulation and the combination of LFOs, step sequences, flux and macro controls mean you can create rhythms with movement unlike anything else. Movement is built to be a powerhouse of an engine, but organised simply for quick and easy use. For most people, you'll start with the browser and select one of 300 presets based on the type of rhythm or character. For example, if I have a synth pad, here are a few presets. If I have a guitar, here are a few other presets. And if I have a full track, you can do something like this. Once you've selected your preset, you can use the XY pad to dial in the exact sound you want, or automate the rhythm within your DAW or in a live setting maybe. The XY pads are actually macros controlling a lot of parameters at once. For example, in this preset, the slider is controlling the filter, while it's also controlling the delay too. Anything assigned to the XY pad has this little circle, and you can edit the parameters here. You'll also see a wet dry slider up top, and this is very useful for bringing movement in and out entirely. Movement's power comes from blending the original source with 4 unique rhythm engines, each with sidechain modulation, LFOs, step sequencers, as well as Output's proprietary flux mode and a powerful randomizer. In addition, analog modeled effects allow you to further add a sense of motion. Imagine reverbs and compressors pumping, filters and EQs opening and closing, delays morphing, and even tube distortion warming and cooling. In total, there are 76 parameters you can modulate at one time, and with 4 engines, the rhythm you hear is truly a blend of many things at once. Modulation within movement is extremely simple. You choose the source in each engine by clicking here, and within that, the rate or rhythm. Then you just drag the number to the knob. That's it. If you want to modulate more, remember, modulate is just the technical term for change. If you want to modulate more, move the slider to the right and less to the left. Right-clicking allows you to unassign and even change XY pad settings. An exciting feature in movement is the sidechain modulation mode. We're all used to kit compressor sidechain, for example, but here we've set up sidechain input to modulate filters, reverb, distortion, EQ, delays, and more, all at one time. That means literally anything coming in can serve as the source for your rhythm. Also note, you can pump the sound in either direction as a boost or a duck, and both in unipolar and bipolar modes. Flux mode is another exciting feature that adds a little bit of insanity to the rhythm, but in a really musical way. Here's an example. You'll hear that built into lots of presets, and it's essentially rate amount modulation being controlled by the other rhythm. You can turn it off and on here. Remember, you can modulate all kinds of knobs from volume and pan to any of the parameters within the onboard effects. And just to be clear, we know you have great delays, reverbs, compressors of your own, and so these aren't meant to be used as insert effects, but rather these have been optimized for modulation. After all, that's what movement is all about. The onboard effects include stereo delay, analog modeled filter, analog modeled EQ, digital reverb, tube distortion, and a VCA compressor. Our goal is to create a single place for you to go and add depth and modulation to anything you plug in. If you ever find yourself needing help, click the question mark icon here and that will show you what each knob does on screen. We hope you enjoy working with it as much as we do, and please stay tuned for updates and additional product videos to come.
All right, so there you go. That's the third plugin in the effects bundle, currently on sale on pluginboutique.com. Nick, go ahead and throw the link in the chat so people can check it out. Now is the time to grab these if you can, because you're going to want them all in your toolbox. If you haven't noticed, I'm a huge fan, and you know, go get them if you can. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. So we just checked out Movement. As Josh said, that was the first effects plugin, and the first time they went outside of a contact instrument. Obviously, they've continued that tradition with Thermal and Portal. But I was actually thinking, Josh, you could actually see the beginnings of the giant XY kind of performance pad inside of Movement, and there's even a little bit of animation in there as well. Can you just kind of give us in case people didn't get from the video, just kind of the quick intro to Movement and what it's about and what it does?
Sure. Yeah, so Movement is somewhat self-explanatory. The idea is adding movement to your sound. So it's basically a big modulation box with again, with a bunch of effects built in. So you can, a lot of it creates like pulses or driving, like modulation. It's really great. It's cool because there are the effects in it. So you can, it's not just like a volume sort of like LFO. Or, you can do a lot of filter stuff. There's like, you can modulate reverb sizes and get like reverb swells. There's like the typical pumping sort of like 4 on the floor sidechain sounds. And one thing, actually, a really cool thing about movement is the sidechain input. So you can modulate any effect or parameter in movement via a sidechain input, which is kind of unique for that type of plugin. But yeah, it's all about adding movement and kind of rhythmic interest to your sounds.
Very cool. So yeah, John, I know you're a busy person and you've got some things coming up, so I won't take you too much longer here, or I won't hold on to you too much longer. I do have a question, which again is about future stuff, and I know you can't answer, but I would be a bad host if I didn't ask the questions people asked in the chat. And I was wondering, and it is kind of an interesting question, and they were wondering if you guys have any plans for, and obviously you wouldn't tell me, but have you ever discussed making a synth rather than a contact library or an effects plugin? And on top of that, we kind of talked about it before, but maybe drums and percussion, something that might be on the table in the future. Obviously, we all love output, we love the instrument libraries, and we love the effects, and we just want more. And if you're doing everything else so well, it'd be great to get an output drum library, or it may be even an output synthesizer.
Yeah. I can't say in particular what we're working on, but I will say that the dream is to be able to make full tracks with output library. Like, we want an ecosystem that you can do everything in. So there are drums in Arcade. They're loop based, so not really like the things you're going to play on a drum pad, but definitely, yeah, I would just say, stick around, stay tuned.
All right, so I'm going to give away one more copy of Movement. So right now in the chat, just put in output, and you'll be entered for your chance to win a copy of Movement. I am going to give away one copy of the bundle in 1 second, but I got a couple more questions that I think we should ask. Josh, just a general question. How many people work on the UI UX team, and how much of a pain is it to make sure that the concept works well with the usability of the plugin? So, I mean, we've talked about this a couple times today. You said it's a big part of making sure not only does it work right, but if it looks right. Like, is there any times where that has become sort of a difficult process? It seems like you've got it nailed down, almost like a template at this point when it comes to effects. But do you just want to field that question for us?
Yes, I think there's 2 questions. So the first one, like, how big is our UI UX team? I don't know the answer to that. We do have a in-house design team, and it's growing. Our company is growing very fast. And as we grow, we're starting to do a lot more of user testing and kind of figuring out how people outside of the company use our plugins. So, for, like I mentioned earlier, a lot, early on, we're all musicians and just kind of built what we wanted to see and made it work how we wanted it to. But as we grow and get our instruments and sounds to more people, we're definitely focusing on taking user feedback and building things that work for everyone. And can you remind me what the next question was? Do we ever run into issues?
Yeah, I mean, is there, like, what sort of back and forth process is there between making it sound good and look good at the same time? Because form needs to follow function.
Sure.
But, like, what's the process like? If there's anything you can tell us.
Yeah, there's always compromises that have to be made. I think on both sides. But one thing about output products that I think makes it work so well is because we have the front page, which is always going to be easy to use. So like you're guaranteed to have something that looks really nice and is easy to use and will make big changes in the sound with little not prior knowledge or effort, like macros and the XY pads and all that. And then if you go to the advanced pages, sometimes like there's a lot more going on. So it's not necessarily always the most user-friendly thing to go to the advanced page. So I think that's kind of where the trade-off is like, there's not really like a middle ground for someone who's like, there's not, it goes from easy to advanced. There's not like the sort of middle so much.
Yeah. You either
makes sense.
Put the toe in or you jump in. That's what
Right.
we're doing. No, I mean, it works just fine. That's a perfectly good answer. And that's it, Josh. As I said, I know you've got a meeting coming up, so I got to let you go. But thank you so much for stopping by today. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat. We're going to go ahead and give away a copy of the entire effects bundle that includes thermal, portal, and movement right now. If you want to enter to win, all you need to do is put the fire emoji in the chat and hit the like button. If you haven't been hitting the like button, what are we doing? I can't keep telling you guys. I just hit the like button. Fire emoji in the chat if you're enter your chance to win a copy of all 3 effects plugins from Output. And that's it. That's going to wrap it up. Josh, is there anything else you want to let us know about what's going on with Output besides the incredible deal happening on pluginboutique.com?
No, just thanks for watching and listening to us chat. And yes, definitely, stay tuned for future updates. We got a lot of stuff in the works.
So Josh, we look forward to having you back on stream once you have a new product out so we can talk about it in depth. Maybe hook up an actual demo. You can show us what's going on, or we can do the videos again. But yeah, definitely when you got something else to show and tell, definitely hit us up and we can throw another one of these live streams out there for the people. I think they like it. Wonderful. Nick, if you want to go ahead and send me the winners of everything, I could just announce those so we can let Josh go. Josh, just hang on the line with me if you could.
Sure.
I don't want to mess anything. The stream has actually gone flawlessly today, and I'm concerned if you hang up, everything will just my computer will crash and light on fire because all those fire emojis in the chat. I don't know how it works, but I believe my friend Nick, who's been manning the chat, doing a fantastic job, putting links to everything as we talk about him, is going to be sending me the full list of winners of the plugins. So what of the contact libraries, Josh, which is your personal favorite?
I think Exhale. Well, no, okay. Exhale, but Analog Brass and Winds is a close tie. There's just some like really cool sounds in there. I particularly like in the analog strings and the Analog Brass and Winds, the non-traditional sampling that we did with like the kind of like raindrop pizzicato stuff and the like textural stuff. I just think is great.
Cool. Well, I agree with you. All 3 of those libraries and Substance as well. I don't know why we keep not bringing up Substance, but I mean you need the low end, and Substance delivers the low end each and every time.
It does. All
right, so I got the winners here. You lucky people, are you ready? By the way, the winners will be put in the first comment of the archive of this live stream. And also, if you are a winner, email support@pluginboutique.com to claim your prize. Number 1, we've got the winner of Portal, Epic Labs and Quiet Girl Beats. Congratulations, you have won a copy of Portal from Output. Thermal. Oh, no. Nick, we've got a duplicate here. We're going to have to get another. Right now, more fire emojis for a copy to a chance to win a copy of Thermal. We have a duplicate, so we can't give it away to the same person twice. Nick, we're going to do one more giveaway right now for a copy of Thermal. But Kimmy Anderson, for sure you win a copy of Thermal. Movement, we've got 22 Decibel and Mitesh Bandhu. That's MITESHBANDHU. You win a copy of Movement as well. And finally, Karis Robertson. You just won a copy. You just won a copy of Thermal right here at the end of the stream. Congratulations.
Can we give? That's my fiance. Can we give it to someone else?
Oh my gosh, Josh, what are you doing out here? One more time. We need more fire emojis in the chat because we have to give it away. And apparently, Karis is Josh's fiance, so we cannot. She's already got a copy. More fire emojis for your chance to win a copy of Thermal. And the winner of the Output Effects bundle is Corey Mumper. Congratulations. You get a copy of all 3 of these wonderful plugins. And right now, Nicholas is typing for the actual winner of Thermal. It's coming in. Drum roll, please. He stopped typing. My goodness. More fire emojis. Just keep the fire emojis coming until I say. Oh. Nick, we got someone coming? Nicholas, you're leaving me hanging. Well, this is awkward, Josh. Congratulations on your being engaged.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's wonderful. That's good news.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're excited.
Okay. Justin Collins, congratulations. You are the winner of Thermal. As I said, I'm going to leave a list of who won what as the first comment on this video. Email support at Plugin Boutique and to claim your prize. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks again to Josh. Thanks again to Josh's fiance for tuning in and watching and participating in the giveaways.
Yeah, thanks all of you.
Yeah, go check out Output. Links to it. Plugin Boutique. Go check out the incredible deal they got on offer. Thanks again, Josh. Joel, we can go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll see you all in the next live stream.